Hello and welcome to the Process Designer Overview. In this video, we'll familiarize you with all of the powerful process automation and process management capabilities within AgilePoint's App Builder. To get started, let's select the App Builder module from the portal menu. This brings us to the App Builder homepage, and as you can see on the left-hand side, I have all of the applications that I have permission to design against. So in selecting an application, you'll see that there are a number of application artifacts, things like processes. Under shared resources, you'll find connection strings, file upload repositories, CSS and JavaScript. But for now, let's click into the process model. Okay, now before we look into the specifics of this application, let's take a look at all of the tools at your disposal to create end-to-end automation at large scale. On the left-hand side, we have the various AgilePoint stencils. Here you'll find integrations into more than 70 cloud and on-premises business systems, common process elements like email notifications or conditions, and many other features. In clicking the plus icon here, you'll see the 70 integrations that AgilePoint supports with more than 700 total easily configurable workflow activities. On this list, you'll find things like Active Directory, which is going to be very handy in on or offboarding sorts of scenarios. AgilePoint's own APIs have been exposed as easily configurable activities. Databases, digital signature and document automation, document management systems like Dropbox, Google Drive, SharePoint or Box, blockchain, Jira, Azure AD, machine learning, chatbots, and many RPA providers, Power Automate, Blue Prism, and UiPath. Now, as we mentioned, there's quite deep integration across all of these as well. Taking Salesforce here as an example, you're going to find more than 30 easily configurable activities, meaning that I can interact and write data to Salesforce without having to understand the complexities of that underlying system. So to give you a sense of how this might work, I'm going to take the Create Record activity and drop it onto my canvas. I'm going to give this activity a name here. In our case, we're going to create a lead. Now first I'm going to select how do I want to connect to Salesforce. In this case here, we're selecting an access token that my IT department has created on my behalf. And then next, I'm going to select the type of object that I want to create on the Salesforce side. Now in Salesforce, there is both out-of-the-box objects as well as custom objects. It's going to work the exact same way for both of those types. Okay, so I've selected that I want to create a lead. And what I'll do here is simply pass data from AgilePoint over to Salesforce. So on the left-hand side, I have my AgilePoint data fields, and on the right-hand side, I have Salesforce. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to map a few of these fields. I'm going to take the company name and drop that onto company. The submitted by field is going to go to the name field as an example. And email address to email. Now I'm not going to map all of these fields, but as you can see here, I simply take the AgilePoint data and map that over to the appropriate node on the Salesforce side, making it very easy to pass data between different systems. So next, let's spend a few moments looking at the process that you're seeing here on screen. And as you can see, this process consists of a number of human activities, as well as system activities, like sending an email or creating an invoice. So let's take a look at how these activities are configured. So first, we're going to go into Configure Activity. This is high-level details about the activity itself. The first step being here to associate a user interface with this step in our business process. As you can see here, we have a UI that's been selected. And then we'll simply navigate through the wizard step by step to configure our desired behavior. You're seeing here the next step is to implement a display name. This display name is what will show up in my task list as well as my mobile device, and it should be descriptive to the user, indicating the sort of work that they should be doing. As you can see here, I have a time to complete field. The amount of time this task should take to complete can be specified on various timescales, from minutes or seconds all the way up to the month. I can give this task a default priority level, and of course escalate this to a higher priority based on various factors. And with one click, I can make this task offline available, meaning that even if I don't have an internet connection, I can still work with my tasks while offline. As you can see here, the next step is the participant. In other words, who is going to do the work for this particular task? And there are different ways that we can specify users, groups, or roles to do the work. For one, as you can see here, we can hard code a group, a role, or a user. On the other hand, we can certainly assign these tasks a lot more dynamically. By that I mean, maybe I want to assign it based on some element on my form. Now this is an invoice processing use case, so perhaps there are users who are responsible for approving invoices from a certain company or of a certain purchase type, for instance. Under data source, I can do a lookup against some table and assign tasks dynamically in that manner, as well as based on any system data or global variables. In the event of bringing unregistered users into the process, you're seeing here we have the ability to enable anonymous access. And then lastly, any notifications that should go along with this particular task. Okay, so having covered the task configuration, let's spend a few moments talking about how we control our process level logic. In AgilePoint terminology, this is known as a condition. So let's expand out one of our conditions here. And as you can see, there are two potential outcomes in this scenario here. I have no limitations in terms of the number of conditions that I place. And to check how this has been configured here, as you can see, there's an if scenario. So in this case, if the routing decision does not equal to return to submitter, go left versus right. So how did we get to that point? Well, if I expand out application data, I know that routing decision was a form element. So I would find that under form data, and I'd expand that out. Here you see routing decision. So if I were building this condition for the first time, I would click routing decision and drag it under the if box. Next, I would look at my operators. So as you can see here, there are various categories: string, Boolean, date, time, or number. And I would simply select the appropriate operator for my use case. And then the value. So in this case, if the routing decision does not equal to return to submitter, go left versus go right in the process. So that's how we build our conditions. If we go back to our UI here and pull up our form, we'll find the routing decision field under the routing decision tab. So as you can see, here's that return to submitter value that we're evaluating as a part of our condition. Okay, so going back to our process designer here, the last piece that I'll explain as a part of this video is the menu that you're seeing here at the top. So the first option is the ability to save or save and check in your work. All right, so here, as I'm making changes and adding functionality, I want to commit these changes to the database. And if I'm ready to release the application, if I'm done for the day, in other words, and I want to enable a colleague to sign in and do their work, I would select Save and Check In. I can also save this process model as an image, as XPDL, or save the process JSON. Now, as I'm working on the application, I may make a mistake, in which case I have undo and redo options, the ability to cut, copy, and paste any of the activities that you're seeing here on screen. I can delete an activity. As I'm building the application, I'm often going to want to clean up my process model and make it easier to read. So in this case here, if I wanted to arrange activities a little more nicely, I would draw a box around the activities. And then as you can see here, right, I have different orientation or different alignment options. So from a horizontal perspective, that's going to arrange things horizontally, right? And similarly, if I draw a box around two other activities, I can align them vertically. If I'd like to take a closer look into my process model, I have the ability to zoom in and zoom out, return to the standard view, and model size allows me to take stock of the entire application from end to end. You'll see here we have a validate button. This is going to check for errors in our application, ensure that there are no circular references or name clashes in fields, and generally ensure that our application will run. By selecting an activity and then clicking on Properties, I can see details about this particular activity, how long is the expected duration, which work is being done here, any notifications associated, the participants, auditing level, and many other details. Under Form Data, you're going to see the Process Data Explorer as we've just walked through when we were talking about conditions. So this is going to show me all of the UI elements, right? All of my data points on the form, any process level attributes, any external data sources that I've associated with this particular application, system data, and then global variables. Similarly, I can also access all of the forms and make edits and delete if I so desire. Of course, I can always click into an individual form here and edit it, as we saw just a few moments back. From a notifications perspective, as you can see here, we have various ways to notify someone they have work to complete, the default being email, but as you can see here, AgilePoint does support the concept of multi-channel notifications. Right? By that I mean a task notification via Chatter, via Skype, Yammer, SMS for instance. And then lastly, under the Miscellaneous tab, you're seeing things like renaming my tasks, perhaps bringing in a naming convention for this particular process. Right, so if I wanted to make each process instance name unique, right, what I might do as an example is just say, okay, I want to bring in some data from my form. I'm going to say that I want to append the company name here. And then perhaps we'll go into system data. There should be a process started date. There we go. So I can drop process started date is in there as well. Offline forms, we touched on this in task configuration. Here, as you can see, I can instantly make all of the tasks or just a handful of tasks available in an offline mode as an example. I can edit the theme, pull up a report of all of the business logic that's been applied, or I can generate a report about the application as a whole. So I've just generated that process model report here. I can save it as a PDF or print it, for instance. AgilePoint is what's known as a self-documenting platform. So your application and your documentation never get out of sync. Right? As I'm making changes to the application here, AgilePoint is instantly or in real time updating the application documentation. Down below the process model, I'm going to see all of the details of the various system activities as well as human tasks. Right, so here, as you can see, I have my activity name. Right, in this case here, it's a condition. And then as you can see, right, what condition is being evaluated. And then lastly, I have the ability to resize my canvas. Make this smaller or larger as I require. Okay, that concludes the content for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time.